is a game called Full Quiet on the Nintendo Switch. This came out July 7th of 2023 from 8-Bit Legit. And full disclosure, they did provide us review codes, so thank you very much, 8-Bit Legit. This is normally $9.99. It is an 8-bit experience of survival, puzzles, and exploration. This actually is an NES game. It's an NES aftermarket game playable on the NES, so they were able to bring it over and port it to the Switch. This you get lost in this challenging, mysterious open world adventure as you encounter strange creatures, solve puzzles, and figure out how to restore the radio relay grid in order to find your missing son. Look for clues along the way and manage your resources when you decode the secrets of the game. Steve, what are your thoughts?
I have lots of thoughts in this about this game. I'll just say from the very beginning, let's just get this out of the way. I was not a fan of this game. I think from the very beginning, I was confused at what to do. It wasn't super clear. The menus were even tough to navigate. Like I was like, what? I don't even understand how to operate the menu. Just if you play the game, X button backs you out of things. That is not super clear all the time. But the X button is your friend to back out of things as one step back. Usually you're used to doing that on the B button, but that is not the case in this game. You do have the opportunity. I like the opportunity to customize my controls. So eventually, remapped my controls because I wanted my shoot button to be on Y, and I wanted B to be jump, and A to be the forward dash jump thing, front roll thing, whatever. And so I remapped those buttons, which is nice. I like that they gave you that opportunity. But yeah, I had a rough time with this game. I think the levels are pretty bare bones sometimes as you're moving from one thing to the next. Sometimes you have no enemies at all. You're just walking from the left to the right or the right to the left, depending on which way you're going. Sometimes that's 2 or 3 screens in a row. You have nothing on the screen at all. I'm like, what was the point of this? Like and all that stuff. Yeah, I think the controls were, like I said, were a little rough, but you do have the opportunity to change them up. But they don't use all the buttons on the controller. I could understand if they said, "Hey, we're only going to keep it to like the NES, and we're only going to use the main control pad and A and B." And that makes sense, but they don't. They use X and Y and the ZR and ZL. So why not use R and L to do things as well? And why not use the secondary stick to do stuff as well? So like and there's just some things that I was like, this could be easier, I think, in the long run. So they say the game is difficult, but I think the controls make it even more difficult. And the lack of not knowing what's going on, you really do need to read the manual like that's on the game. But even getting into the manual, like, I don't know about your copy, but my copy, I opened the manual and it went to a blank screen. And I thought the game had crashed, or I thought like, oh, they forgot to put the manual in there. And then I had to click a button to actually turn a page. And then eventually I got the manual. They also have a 2-page tip thing in there. Also, highly recommend reading those tips so you know how to even grab a hold of a ledge, because that's not completely obvious on how to do that. Like sometimes you'll be entering into a door and then you have to jump up to a ledge. Well, guess how you grab a ledge? You hold up, which also puts you through that door. So you have to be precisely in the right spot in order to avoid going back through the door, but also be able to jump up on the ledge. So different things like that. I mean, if it's trying to capture the original NES experience, some games were like that on NES. They weren't super polished, but I feel like now we're in 2023. There's a few things that I wish they would have polished a little bit more. But Barry, I'm going to let you talk about it a little more. I've got some other things, but that's kind of a general impression at the beginning here.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. It's one of those things where when you're so divorced from that era of gaming, it's you just want to like 2023 era, you put a game in, you push start, and you get right into it. And the NES era, Super Nintendo, Master System, Genesis era was different. You opened up the box, you read through the manual before you ever popped that cartridge in. And I went into it like a 2023 game, and I was confused. I was like, "What am I doing? Where am I going?" And like I died, and I was like, "Okay, let me try this again." So I got a little farther, and then I died. I'm like, okay, we're doing this. We're going back, bringing me back to NES days. Let's do this. And eventually, I got past that, and I hit a loop, and I was like, what do I do? And then I was like, oh, I got to read the manual, and I'm like, oh man, this is bringing me back. So in terms of authentic experience, yes, it is. It is definitely there, and that's what I think that's what they were going for, which is really really cool. And it's ambitious. This game is very ambitious. There's a lot to do in it. There's a lot of items. There's a lot of story, which is not usually the case when it comes to NES games. But it's also cryptic. It's very cryptic. You're gonna come across like key codes, and you're like, "What do I do? Like, what do I do? Like, was there a clue somewhere? Did I miss it? Like, where do I go?" And like, there's parts where it's like there's like two levels, and you could go down and up between them, and it's not really clear that you can do that. And there's like an in between level too, and I'm like, "Where do I go?" And there's one point where like a plant grabbed me from a tree and pulled me up, and I'm like hitting all the buttons, and I'm like, why can't I get out? And then I realized I had to rotate the analog stick to get out,
I am
and I'm like,
so glad to hear that I was not the only one to experience that.
it's like, what am I doing? I'm spamming A and B. I'm like, come on, like get
I was
me
like,
out of
well,
this tree.
I guess I'm
I,
done.
I almost turned it off. I was like, I guess I'm done here at this point. I'm stuck. And then I'm like, well, maybe I rotate the analog stick, and I drop down, and I was like, really? Because like again, 2023 gaming, you push buttons like crazy to get out of holds like that. And NES days, was it? Did we do the rotator
Mhm.
on the control? The control pad. It's been so long. But I was like, okay, I'm getting this. But then I got like into a loop, and I just kept going around. I'm like, what do I do? I just keep going around the same squares, and I'm like, I was starting to get bored, and it started getting dark, and I'm like, what's gonna happen at dark? Oh my god, like it's really cool that there's a day-night sequence in an NES game. Like that's really cool. But I didn't find out what happened in dark because I got killed before I could find shelter, and like I found buildings, and I'm like, I can't get into these buildings. What do I do? And I'm like, it was tough.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's like, yeah, especially like when you start the game, you get to a point where you're in this cave, and you're on this platform, and there's like a bottomless pit in front of you, and you have no idea what to do. So you have to take a leap of faith, and you have to jump down there, and you hit the ground, and you get hurt, and you get an what I call an E tank, because it looks just like a Mega Man
It
E
looks
tank. I'm
just like one.
sorry.
Yeah.
And there's a note that says, "Oh yeah, use these to heal. Sometimes when you drop, you're gonna take damage." I'm like, that was cryptic as hell. There was
Yep.
no arrow pointing down. I didn't even want to jump, but I was like, what do I do? Like, is there a tool? And I think I pushed down and A, which made me like roll, like a jump ahead, like a long jump roll, like a
Mhm.
dash roll. And I was like, oh crap, I'm dead. And I was like, oh, I'm not dead. What
Yeah.
the heck is going on?
Yeah. I'm going to stop you because
So,
I did the exact same thing the very first time I played. You can jump onto the ledge over there. And I did that and I backtracked through that whole world the second time I played through it. So it
oh,
is possible to not have to take that leap, like, which I thought was crazy. There's no way, but I finally realized how to grab onto ledges, and you can jump across that. So you don't
oh,
have to go that way. You can, but you don't have to. But I,
I
I
took the
experienced the
kamikaze.
exact same thing you did the first time I played it too. Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say, like, I think, like, because we're already saying like this game is difficult, it's confusing, but one of the things you may or may not get to, I think eventually, like you said that you do get to these things. I don't know how often or where they all are because it's so cryptic, but you get to a Morse code machine
Yeah,
sort
I
of
saw
thing.
that.
So I didn't know what I was doing, of course, like we've already said. And so I was just popping around different things. And of course, like most people by this point, I've memorized the code for SOS. Don't put in SOS because it turns on hard mode immediately. And then there's no way to turn it off. And at that point, then I just walked around. The enemies were a little harder to beat. And I was like, well, who knows what's going to happen now? And then I got to this other puzzle where you're supposed to like connect pipes and stuff together. And to how to rotate those tiles is not intuitive whatsoever. You can rotate them. It's possible. You hit the X button, I think, but it doesn't tell you to do that at all. So that's cryptic. And eventually, if you don't solve that puzzle in time, you take damage. But I didn't know how much damage I was taking because I wasn't paying attention. I didn't realize not solving a puzzle in time was going to give me damage. And so I had like 2 or 3 life bars left. I had the E-tanks to be able to give me life, but I thought it's a puzzle, whatever. And so it didn't get the puzzle done in time. It killed me. Back to the very beginning of the game again. And at that point, I was like, power off. I'm done.
Yeah, I think this game would really benefit from saves, and maybe the save points we just didn't hit them. But I definitely think some kind of save system or checkpoints would be really beneficial but again, that's how it was with a lot of NES games and just like arcade games. You died, you went back to the beginning. So yeah, this is definitely a tough game. Do you have anything else before giving final thoughts on it, Steve?
No, I think that's about it. I think just in general, I mean, like the something I noticed on the Switch home screen on the title of the game, you'll notice that it has Morse code on there. So clearly that is a theme that's probably going throughout the game, but I have no
Maybe
idea how.
that's the
But
Morse code you're supposed to use, right?
it's probably the Morse code for full quiet, is my guess. But I don't know.
Yeah, you know what there is. There's Morse code. Well, yeah, I think it is the Morse code for full quiet, which would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that's what you're supposed to say. But I also did the SOS because like, what do I do? Once I realized it was a Morse code machine, I'm like SOS, and I was like, oh, uh-oh.
Yep.
Like you just preyed on everyone here. But I
Mm-hmm.
think that's great. I like when games do that. So I actually gave it a point for that because I was like, you know what? You're asking for help, and instead of giving help, you're giving us the opposite of help. So I
Yeah.
like that. I thought that was funny. So it's like I said, it's 9.99. Not right now, not on sale. Would you recommend this, Steve, to somebody? Yes or no?
I only to a certain person. Like if you are a gamer that you enjoy the retro NES style game, you enjoy the Metroidvania kind of style of game, and you are someone that really wants to go after it and just loves a really good challenge that's not just the game itself, like because they're throwing difficult stuff at you, but you're like, I got to figure out this game. That's part of the challenge itself, is just figuring out the game itself. Then I think you're probably going to enjoy it because it's not a bad game. I just didn't have a good experience with it, but it's not a bad game. I think there's a couple things that they need to polish a little bit more. So, but it's not bad. It's just it's not for everyone at all, and it's not for me.
I'm gonna echo that. I think that's a great game here. I think you have to be in the right mindset, and you have to go into it, expecting this and to experience this type of game. If you go into it expecting a 2023 modern game, you are going to be severely disappointed. So if you love that retro NES style, like I said, this is an actual NES game. Like it's playable on an NES, unlike Shovel Knight, which is an NES style that's not playable. Everything here is within the NES limitations. Um, that being said, you have to want to dive into the manual. You want to dive into the secrets, figure it out. It's almost like a Souls-like in terms of difficulty in that regards. Then I agree. I think it's a great game with a story to tell that I didn't get to fully experience, and like I said, just due to I guess more complications, but it's funny, in terms of experiencing this type of thing again. And I do honestly recommend it for that type of gamer. But if you're like, no, I need tutorials and need hand holding, and I want all the puzzles solved for me, and you're gonna have a terrible time. Uh, and I guess it's also one of those things where I don't know. I didn't look online. I didn't like Google online trying to find like solutions to puzzles. I was like, I'm gonna try to do it myself. So if the solutions are there for you to find, you might have a better experience. Part of the charm, I think, for the NES days where the puzzles were cryptic, but you went to school the next day and your friends were playing at the same game. And you would sit there at lunch and you would talk about it. You would figure it out. And I think it created a community aspect prior to at least for us, prior to the internet. And you know, you don't get that now. I don't think you're going to be even if you were in elementary school, playing this, you have the internet, you have those things, and I don't think the majority of kids are going to be playing this because there's so many other games on the Switch right now, and this is a niche title. But I do recommend, and I do want to thank once again 8-Bit Legit for providing us codes. It was really really nice of you, and hopefully you guys listening, you decide to check it out for yourself. It's on the eShop now.